Is a dead reckoning finally coming for Tom Cruise and his involvement in Scientology? Welcome to Popcorn Planet. I am Andy Signore. I'm so excited to be back here with Aaron Smith-Levin, ex-Scientology expert from Growing Up Scientology. Thanks for being back here. Check out his channel, Growing Up in Scientology. He was here earlier this week talking about the Danny Masterson trial, which he's been covering. Welcome back, sir. How you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, always a pleasure. Look, I don't hide it. I do like Tom Cruise as a movie star, right? And it's very hard for me at times. I love the Mission Impossible movies. Top Gun Maverick was so great, but I don't like the person Tom Cruise, and it's so hard. And I know there's other people out there. And we recently did do a breakdown about the Tom Cruise Suri sort of debate out there and how it does seem like, yes, has disowned his daughter in a way. I mean, I'm not there personally. I don't know if they're calling each other in private and he's afraid for Scientologists. I thought, who's the best person to bring in and get insight on this? It's Aaron. All right. So Aaron, you obviously, as for those who don't know, can you give, before we get to this headline here, which is the fact that Going Clear filmmaker Alex Gibney has claimed, that there is why hasn't there been a reckoning yet for this? All the stuff that Scientology has been accused of. How come Hollywood never really pushes these questions? It does seem like Tom's feeling a little bit of heat because we saw him do less press during the Maverick run. During the Oscars, he went to sort of clear friendlies to avoid anybody sort of creating those big moments. Before we get to your thoughts on Tom, can you give us a quick background for those who are unfamiliar with you? What is your Scientology background? Why are you an expert in this, and why should folks believe you a little bit more, say, than I would?
Well, so I was essentially born and raised in Scientology. I started working for the organization full time when I was 12 years old. I worked from the age of 12 to 34. Well, actually, 12 to 26, and then I was in Scientology until I was 34. I'm just by the time I left Scientology, I'd spent half my life working for them. So I now run Growing Up in Scientology YouTube channel. I also run the Aftermath Foundation. We help people who are escaping from Scientology. I don't know. I guess that's my bona fides in the Scientology.
Valid reasons why you know more. So did you ever meet Tom when you were over there? Were you aware of what was going on with Tom? Did they keep him siloed off into a separate rung of things?
Oh, everything about Tom is kept very, very secret and hush hush. My wife worked in one of the higher level organizations that was responsible for catering to the celebrities. So she's met Tom a few times. I've never personally met him.
Okay, but you've heard you heard rumorings or rumblings or sort of some of the process that celebrity phase did. I guess the first question, everyone sort of has is, why hasn't he really addressed this stuff? There's been a lot more recently due to Leah Remini and due to other, Shelley Miscavige. Jokes are starting to come out more in Hollywood sort of monologues and things. It does seem like the heat has been raised on Scientology, clearly being problematic, to say it the nicest. I guess let me start here. Do you feel like he's noticing that and speaking up about Scientology less?
Yeah, I think his best buddy, David Miscavige, who runs Scientology, I think Miscavige basically gave him, whether you want to call it permission or gave him orders to stop talking about Scientology publicly. I think it was Miscavige who was behind Tom really coming out strong back in 2005, War of the Worlds era, when Tom started talking about Scientology publicly. That was because Miscavige wanted him to. And I think what happened is they saw that it didn't quite turn out the way that they thought it would. It actually opened up Scientology to a massive new avenue of attacks. And I think they decided that, quiet, mysterious Tom Cruise was perhaps better for Scientology's image than crazy Tom Cruise. And so I think Tom is very aware that Scientology has become the butt of all jokes. I mean, Tom Cruise himself, when he's not, getting headlines for big box office, tends to be the butt of jokes. And that they just decided it's actually better for Scientology if people, the less you know about Tom, the more you like him. If all you know is the Tom that's on the movie screen, the Tom that's pulling in big box office numbers, that's all you know about him, the more likely you are to like him. And that if you just know he's a Scientologist, that's probably the best halo effect that you're going to get on Scientology. But if he's out there running his mouth about it, talking about psychiatrists, talking about psych drugs, talking about Ritalin, whatever, ends up not being that good for Scientology. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
or
Does that answer the
yeah,
question?
no, it does. Or caught, now all the headlines just no part in his daughter's life. And we did that breakdown, which you haven't seen, I'll put it up here. I didn't even realize he sued magazines who were claiming that he did disown his daughter. They ended up settling, which was also interesting. But I mean, I've seen no proof. I was at least being careful because in that breakdown, and I'm curious your thought on it, it was very clear from the research I did, Katie Holmes and her attorney father and her team, they very carefully sniped out of that, unlike others, and somehow managed to get out, get Suri, get control, and he managed to just sort of, okay. And there was some sort of agreement. NDA seems to be there. She never talks about it. I'm sure that had to have been part of it. But it does seem like Tom was surprised. He didn't see it coming, and he was hurt by it in a way. And I wonder, is that what? Because this is the big problem for me. Like, how do you disown your daughter? Scientology makes you do that, right? They become suppressive people. Can you break down sort of why would Tom Cruise disown his daughter? What would Scientology do that?
Sure. I've got a bunch of information on this and then some further speculation about specifically the Suri thing. The way I've criticized Tom for disowning Suri and disconnecting from her is that I've criticized him for doing it, even though, according to the rules of Scientology, strictly speaking, he didn't have to. So Katie Holmes left Tom Cruise. That is not a suppressive act in Scientology. Katie Holmes left Scientology. That's not even a suppressive act in Scientology. Publicly departing Scientology and speaking negatively about it to the press is a suppressive act in Scientology. Katie has kept her mouth shut. She's never said a single word about Scientology. Never. So technically speaking, Tom Cruise did not have to disconnect from his daughter Suri. I feel that him disconnecting from her, even though he didn't have to, more sends a signal to other Scientologists in the world. When you are ordered by Scientology to disconnect from your family, you better do it, because I did it for my family member, even though I didn't even have to.
Interesting.
So I put the responsibility squarely on Tom's shoulders, and I don't really, blame Scientology for that. I blame Tom for that. Now, here's the other thing. And here's some speculation and connecting some dots that I think are there to be connected. Tom sued that publication for essentially calling him, well, they didn't call him a deadbeat dad. What did they say? They basically said that he had abandoned
that he
her.
disowned his daughter.
I think they used the word abandon.
Abandon. Yes, abandon.
And here's my speculation here. I believe his lack of a role in Suri's life is actually something that Katie has asked for and that he has granted her wishes. So therefore, you can't say he's abandoned her if it's an agreement. And I think, with the fact that he settled with that magazine and the fact that he hasn't ever sued anyone else who's continued to say pretty similar things about him, including me, is I think he basically provided the evidence that, one, he still pays child support, and two, any lack of involvement is actually part of an agreement. It's not him abandoning his daughter. And I think, again, I'm speculating here, but this is the only way these dots connect in my mind, is that that's what happened. Katie didn't want Katie didn't want Suri to be spending half the time or even, a month out of the year with Tom, where she's obviously going to be exposed to Scientology, and Scientologists, people are going to be whispering in Suri's ear how Katie's really a suppressive person, just like they did with Nicole Kidman, who, just like Katie Holmes, Nicole Kidman has never said a single negative word about Scientology ever. And so technically speaking, Nicole Kidman's not a suppressive person either, but her kids were still told to treat her as if she was. And Katie knows that the same thing would happen with Suri if Suri spent part of her year in Scientology land.
Well, there's also rumors, right, that Nicole was talking to Katie during that whole period, who I'm sure would have been like, girl, be careful. I lost my kids because of this whole thing. You don't want her over there getting those Scientology birds in your ear.
Yeah, I would believe that.
Huh. Interesting. Well, because that's where I was at. Like, I feel for Tom in a way of like, if that's the case, it just kind of sucks because he's sort of stuck between his thing. I mean, I can't justify it. It's a crazy thing to do, but if the mom wants to go have peace and wants the daughter, there's almost like a, wow, he gave that and gave it up. But that's a big thing there. And so I'm not so quick to judge because I just don't know all the details or what the hurt or what's happening. But it brings a good question of how was this not asked more in media interviews, right? Because it is kind of a huge deal on top of all the other crazy things. So bringing you back to the question of this topic, like, there's obviously a lot of problematic things. Potentially people have questions. He's very private, as he's allowed to be. But do you think there's a point now, seeing where Scientology's heading, that he's now regretting or considering being less involved? Or as you said, it's just going to be I'm not going to announce it publicly. Nothing can keep me from Xenu.
I don't think there's anything making Tom Cruise right now second guess or question his involvement in Scientology. The fact that no one's asked him about it, I think there's so much that could be said about it. I think you mentioned this in one of your videos. In the depositions that were occurring in that lawsuit that Tom sued the publication for saying he abandoned Suri, Tom was forced to admit in the deposition that protecting Suri from Scientology was a major reason that Katie left.
Yep.
He was forced to admit it. The fact that he's continued to be such a major supporter of an organization that made Katie so fearful of her daughter's future that she would leave Tom to protect Suri from it, and no one's going to ask him about it. I think that just proves that in order to interview Tom Cruise, you have to promise not to ask questions about Scientology. I think all the evidence, the circumstantial evidence it may be, exists that in order to interview Tom Cruise, you actually have to promise not to ask about Scientology, because there's no way all of these journalists have just decided this is not newsworthy.
Well, it's funny you said, well, because I know, I don't want to speak out of turn. I know somebody who's interviewed him, and I don't think so. I just think they're such fans that they just know it because they don't want to say it out loud, but it's sort of implied. And what was interesting is when Kimmel, his wife, did some interviews post Oscars when Hot Tom didn't show up, there was a lot of like kissing the ring of, we were never going to bring it up. And I wish Jimmy was so excited to celebrate Tom. And it felt very much like, Tom, we weren't going to do it. You could trust us. But obviously the problem in the Oscars, it's not just Jimmy, it's anybody who goes up there could say something about Scientology, which puts them at the risk. But yeah, it's interesting you say that. But that's where I'm like, I get it. The power of Xenu and all that compels you, but it does feel like Tom Cruise needs to be a movie star and jump off planes and be a successful box office guy. And at a certain point, if the religion's, hurting that business, you don't think even that could eventually make him go, all right, guys, I'm out of here.
If it was truly hurting the business, perhaps an argument could be made for it, but I don't see any evidence that it is. I mean, it's sort of this weird contradiction of Tom Cruise.
Maverick was the biggest movie of all time.
Tom Cruise has kind of become this caricature of this crazy guy, and yet his movies continue to do extremely well. And the fact is, if Tom were to actually leave Scientology, it would only make him a bigger star.
100%. That's what's so weird about it.
It's kind of like
redemption arc, the book, the saving people. Like, do you think he watches any of this stuff, or is he in his own sort of zone where he's like, nope, all suppressive people?
He does not see anything. He doesn't see anything. He's shielded from it. He doesn't want to see the criticism, the negativity. He thinks it goes back to the conspiratorial nature of the belief system that Scientologists have about media in general, that it's all run by psychiatrists and big pharma, and they're all threatened by Scientology, and nothing you read in the press would be accurate anyway. So he's got layers upon layers of people that shield him from this kind of stuff. I mean, John Travolta is the same. John Travolta does not read the internet.
Well, yeah, and I've met him. He's a nice guy. Like, he's
a sweetheart.
There's a version of this where everyone wants to knock him, but there's a part of me that's like, he's in a cult and he doesn't know better. And it does seem like, unlike some of the people involved, like he is shielded and protected and lifted up in a way where he's being told, oh no, it's all bullshit. Don't trust them. They've gotten in so much that, is there a version of this where you could feel sorry for Tom Cruise? Or are you at a point where like, you know too much? No, there's no victim for Tom here. He knows exactly what he's doing.
I mean, look, I can see off in a distance the version of reality where someone figures out why you can feel sorry for Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise has so much personal ability to control and dictate his own actions. He's not being manipulated by some puppet behind the scenes. Perhaps his best friend David Miscavige whispering in his ear is manipulation. Perhaps it can be very hard to differentiate. Where do you cross the line from becoming victim to becoming one of the abused to becoming one of the abusers? Wherever you draw that line, I don't know where it is. Tom crossed that line a long time ago. It doesn't mean he's irredeemable. If the guy were to wake up and leave and go, you know what, I just and tell the story, this is how I was blinded the entire time, and this is what I believed, and now I found out it's not true, sort of like what the path Leah Remini went. There's no real reason why Tom Cruise couldn't someday travel that same path, and I don't mean to say he never will leave. There's just no evidence to show that any of that is happening, and I don't see what the trigger would be at this point. Like, well, Tom is still...
We're staring at it on screen. This daughter's about to turn 18 at some point.
Okay, well, that's actually a really good point. Because
Suri
even as
could be the catalyst, no?
look, even as the words left my mouth, I realized the fact that the biggest movie star in the world cannot find and keep a girlfriend there's got to be some little voice in his head that goes, something's not right. But it's probably a pretty quiet voice if there is one. I don't know. Look, I just know how it feels to be inside the bubble of the cult, and self-reflection is not a luxury that self-reflection, particularly about Scientology itself, is just not a luxury that I think Tom Cruise can afford. Perhaps Suri will be some sort of a catalyst. Is she really almost an adult? I remember when she was born.
Yep. She's 16. It's crazy to think, but yeah, to me, when I realized this, I'm like, at some point she's going to become an adult. The child support payments stop. She can say whatever the hell she wants. Now she may not, but that's Tom. I mean, you can't not see Tom Cruise in this girl. Like, that's Tom. It's her dad. Is there a version? I know. And now I'm just fascinated. You don't think there's a version of this where maybe he is calling her and he doesn't tell Scientology?
No version.
You're so sure. Wow. Because I was like, it's so hard for me to believe as a dad that you could just be like, nope. All right, adios, daughter. I'm never going to speak to you again. That's wild. That is wild.
Because I go back to this. It's not that he has to keep it a secret from David Miscavige that he's talking to Suri. If he is allowed, according to the rules of Scientology, to talk to Suri. She's not a suppressive person. She's a minor child. Even if Katie Holmes were to be declared a suppressive person officially, Tom Cruise could still have a relationship with Suri as long as he wasn't actively getting auditing. And Tom's already had almost all the auditing there is to have. So it would be, it's not, that's why I'm saying.
It's why Katie is in control. You make a very good point that it's probably Katie making that call because she doesn't want to have anybody in Suri's ear.
Yes. And if he was really in touch with her, and his camp would at least deny the allegations that he's continued to disown her. All the major, platforms in the world have run with stories about Tom Cruise really, has disowned his daughter. His camp doesn't even deny it anymore.
Right. It's sad. So to answer the question, is there a reckoning coming? Do you think there is? And I guess the only one you could maybe see is Suri at some point being that catalyst, but you see no other version of Tom rebelling against Scientology.
I don't. I see no other likely version.
Is there a version where society will say enough is enough, Tom? We're not seeing your movies anymore. And do you think if that happens, that could be the catalyst?
I feel like we've already passed max Q if that were to occur. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like back when
Spielberg's telling you you've saved Hollywood, it does feel like at its highest point, but you can do no wrong. And that's sort of what Tom Cruise lives off of, it seems.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Well, if you want to get more breakdowns, Aaron's done a lot of them. You can go follow him. Here's his link tree. I'll put that in there. That gets you to his channel as well, Growing Up in Scientology, where he has talked about Tom. And yeah, his reaction that was a moment, that South Park episode. And I've heard some stuff there's some crazy stuff that went down in the rooms of South Park there as that was all unfolding, everything else. But that was really the turning point, I think, when everyone realized you probably should tone this down, Tom. But yeah, fascinating story. What do you guys think? Do you agree with Aaron there? Make sure you go subscribe to both him and here at Popcorn Planet. Hit the subscribe button, hit that bell for alerts, smash that like button, and leave a comment down below. Do you think Aaron's right? There's no catalyst, or do you think Suri or eventually the public could turn him and then he doesn't want to not get the box office dollars? Leave your comments down below. Always a pleasure to talk to you, sir. I appreciate you coming here. Thanks for being here. Stay tuned for more guys here on Popcorn Planet.